There's a crow sitting above your house right now. Okay, maybe not this exact second, but if you've walked outside at all in the last week through a parking lot, past a park, along any random street in your city, a crow has seen your face. And unlike almost every other creature on this planet, it didn't just look at you, it stored you. Not the way a camera stores an image either. It's more like the way a mind stores a judgment. It assessed your posture, how you move, whether you looked at it directly, whether you felt like a threat, and it filed all of that away somewhere inside a brain the size of a walnut. A brain that scientists are still, quietly, desperately trying to understand. Because here is the thing that honestly keeps researchers up at night. That tiny brain, it is doing things that shouldn't even be possible for its size. Things that completely break our models. It makes neuroscientists stare at scan results, reach for another cup of coffee, and just start the whole analysis over again. 15 of those mind-bending things are in this video, and by the end of it, I promise you will never look at a crow the same way again. Most people think animal intelligence is like a single ladder. You've got humans at the top, chimps and primates just below, then dogs, dolphins, elephants, and then somewhere way further down, birds. Small brain, simple behavior. That's just the assumption almost everyone carries around. But here is what that assumption gets completely, catastrophically wrong. Intelligence isn't a ladder. It's more like a branching tree. And roughly 66 million years ago, right after the asteroid ended the dinosaurs, one branch of that tree, the corvids, the family that includes crows, ravens, and jays began, developing a mental architecture that followed a completely different blueprint than ours. It's not lesser. It's not greater. It's just different in ways that current neuroscience can't even fully map out. See, a crow's brain doesn't actually have a neocortex, that layered, folded structure we always point to as the seat of complex thought in mammals. So for decades, scientists just assumed this meant birds were operating on pure instinct. They thought they were just reactive, not reflective. Then the experiment started producing results that made absolutely no sense. And the more data came in, the more one conclusion became impossible to avoid. These animals aren't just running on instinct. They are thinking, deliberately, flexibly. They have an awareness of self and others that, until recently, we thought belonged entirely to us. If you've been watching crows for a while and find that stuff like this genuinely changes the way you see the natural world, the subscribe button is right there. Because we go this deep in every single video. A crow lands right next to another crow that just found some food. It watches. It waits. And then, the exact second the first crow looks away, it moves in. Simple theft, right? Just opportunistic. You could easily explain that away with basic animal behavior, except for what happens next. The crow that got its food stolen it remembers. And not just that food was taken, either. It remembers exactly which individual took it. In documented studies, that crow will actually start using deception right back. It'll pretend to hide food in one spot, watching to see if the thief is following, and then relocate the actual food somewhere else the second the thief leaves. This isn't just a reflex. This is a mental model of another mind. The crow is basically asking itself, what does that specific guy know? What is he expecting me to do? And how do I trick him? That exact cognitive process, holding a model of another creature's thoughts in your head just to deceive them, is what scientists call theory of mind. And for a really long time, the consensus was that only humans and a few great apes had it. The crow basically just walked right into that exclusive club uninvited. But this is where it gets even stranger. Crows that have never been stolen from birds raised completely in isolation will still start hiding their food way more carefully the second they realize they're being watched. They anticipate theft from a species they've had zero experience with. They aren't learning to distrust. They are born already knowing that minds other than their own exist, that those minds have intentions, and that they're worth worrying about. The concept of crow justice back in 2011, researchers at the University of Washington published a study that has basically become legendary in animal behavior science. They had volunteers wear specific masks, some harassed the crows, while others just acted completely neutral near their nests. Later on, when volunteers walked through the exact same areas doing absolutely nothing threatening, the ones wearing the harassing masks were completely dive-bombed, scolded, and followed. Sometimes this happened years later. But here's the truly staggering detail. Crows that had never even witnessed the original harassment younger birds, or birds from completely different parts of the territory, also started targeting those exact threatening masks. The information had been shared, deliberately passed down through the flock. Now, just think about what that actually takes. A crow that saw the threat had to communicate more than just a simple alarm call. It had to pass along a description. This specific face, this exact level of danger, remember it. And the crow listening had to file that information away, not as some abstract warning, but as a specific, targetable identity. Honestly, this isn't just gossip. This is a justice system. It's a distributed, socially enforced network of accountability running across birds who never even shared the same experience. And here's the part that unsettles researchers the most. The behavior stays incredibly specific. The crows don't just become aggressive toward all humans. They hold the grudge with absolute precision against one face, one identity, while acting completely neutral toward everyone else. That level of discrimination requires a type of social memory and moral categorization that honestly, we still don't even know how to classify in animal intelligence. After a crow dies, something happens that was first documented back in 2015, and honestly, we've been seeing it happen over and over again since. The flock gathers, and it's not to eat. It's not because the body is some kind of territorial signal. They just gather in silence or near silence right around the dead crow. Sometimes they stay there for a really long time. Sometimes they'll even keep coming back to the exact same spot days later, long after the body is completely gone. Scientists originally called this behavior cacophonous assemblies. It's such a clinical textbook term, almost like they were deliberately trying to distance themselves from it. Because let's be real, what it actually looks like is incredibly uncomfortable to name directly. It looks like mourning. But here's the part that complicates that simple explanation. These gatherings don't just happen for birds that were part of the same flock. They do it for complete strangers. If a crow is found dead in a territory where nobody knows it, the local crows will still gather. They still fall quiet. They still keep coming back. We don't fully understand what's happening neurologically in those moments. But researchers have found that when a crow experiences a social loss, a specific part of their brain lights up the pallium, which is basically their version of our cortex. And those activation patterns look a lot like the emotional processing that happens in a primate's brain. Something is definitely being felt. Now, whether that maps perfectly onto what we humans call grief, that's a philosophical question science hasn't really answered yet. But the behavior itself, the way they gather, the silence, the way they return it, suggests that crows have some kind of internal understanding of death as a concept. It means something to them beyond just an immediate threat. Which brings us to the spontaneous gift paradox. In Seattle, this 8-year-old girl named Gabby Mann started feeding the crows in her yard. After a while, the crows started leaving things behind on the feeding platform, little objects, a piece of glass, a small hinge, a button, a bit of foil that looked like it had been deliberately folded into a shape. Over a few years, her family actually cataloged more than 70 of these items. At first, scientists were really hesitant to call these gifts. I mean, it's easy to just say it's a coincidence. Maybe they just dropped an object near a food source. It's a safe, logical explanation, except for one little detail that made the coincidence theory pretty hard to believe. The objects left for Gabby were consistently different from anything crows were dropping anywhere else in the area. The items they brought her were by any normal standard, just more refined, more unusual, more interesting. It looked like the crows were actually curating them, like they were picking things based on some internal standard of what this specific person who had been nice to them would actually like. Just think about what that actually takes. A crow has to hold a mental model of a human's preferences in its head. It has to search its environment not for food, but for things that might interest another mind. It has to judge it, pick it up, carry it, and leave it based on a social calculation that is entirely abstract. This is reciprocal altruism on a cognitive level that scientists are still arguing about today, mainly because it just doesn't fit cleanly into any textbook framework we have for animal behavior. A crow encounters a puzzle box. Inside, the food is completely visible, but there's no way to get to it. The crow walks around it, looks at it from a few different angles, and then just leaves. But then, it comes back 20 minutes later, and this time, It has a tool it went and collected from a totally different location, and it uses it to get the food out. See, that gap between the first encounter and the actual solution is the detail that really matters here. The crow didn't just react immediately, it processed everything. It built a mental model of the problem, figured out a solution in the abstract, found the physical tool to make it happen in a completely separate environment, and came back. This is mental time travel. It's the ability to project yourself into an imagined future, plan for it, and then act in the present based on that projection. And it gets even crazier. In another study, crows were presented with a scenario they had never ever seen before. A piece of food floating in a tube of water, just out of reach. Nearby, there were some stones. The crows, without any trial and error at all, started dropping the stones into the water to raise the level and bring the food right to them. No practice, no coaching, just pure physics reasoning applied to a brand new problem. And the question this leaves researchers sitting with is honestly pretty uncomfortable. Because if planning for imagined futures is how we define conscious thought, and for a long time that was the definition, then the crow sitting outside your window right now might be doing something we don't even have the right language for yet. Now, look, every single secret in this video has a clean, skeptical counter-argument. Researchers debate all of it. They argue over the methodology, the sample sizes, the risk of anthropomorphizing and reading too much into things. But here's what doesn't have a counter-argument. The behavior itself. It's been documented, repeated, cross-referenced across independent labs on multiple continents. The experiments keep running, and the results keep coming back exactly the same. And the real question sitting beneath all 15 of these secrets, the one that no scientific paper has been able to answer cleanly yet, isn't how crows do these things. It's what it means that they do. Think about the mirror test. You place a mark on an animal where it can only see it by looking in a mirror. If the animal touches the mark after seeing its reflection, it means it recognizes the reflection as itself. It understands that the image is me. Crows pass this test. But here is the part the headlines always leave out. Some individual crows, after passing the mirror test, actually start using the mirror. They'll turn their heads at specific angles, examining areas of their own bodies they can't see any other way. They'll adjust their behavior based on what the reflection shows them. They don't just recognize themselves, they find the mirror useful. That isn't a reflex. That is a crow that understands it has a body, can observe that body from the outside, and can actually act on that information. And if you really sit with what that means, that somewhere in the city you live in the trees right above the streets you walk every day, there are minds doing exactly this. Looking at themselves, knowing they exist, thinking about what comes next. Then the crow that watched you walk by this week wasn't just some random animal in your peripheral vision. It was a mind, noticing another one. The next time a crow holds your gaze just a second longer than feels comfortable, ask yourself, what exactly is it filing away? Drop your own crow encounters down in the comments. I really want to know what it did.